Hello, welcome to the Rhode Island Small Business Coalition Forum. I'm your host, David Dadekian, a small business owner here in Rhode Island. I own Eat, Drink, Rhode Island. Thank you again for joining us this week. It's always great to have you watching and seeing some of the great guests we've got on. This being election season leading into the September 13th primary, we've got a lot of great candidates on. And today we've got Joy Fox, who is running for the 2nd Congressional District that Congressman Langevin is retiring from. So welcome to Joy Fox.
Hey, David. Thank you so much for having me.
Always got that momentary buffering thing. Here we go.
Sure. Hi, David. How are you?
Hi, Joy. How are you?
Hi.
The wonders of the internet. It allows us to do this, and it's wonderful, but sometimes it just slows down just a tiny bit.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Our pleasure. It's good to have you. We try to have as many candidates on here as possible to hear from them regarding the small business community and what's going on here in Rhode Island with small business. So why don't we start? Why don't you give the viewers an overview of yourself and what you're doing and running for the 2nd Congressional District?
Great. Thank you. Yes, I am running for Rhode Island's 2nd Congressional District. I got into this race because I care deeply about the community that I live in and grew up in, and have never been afraid of tackling challenges throughout my career, and think that I am in the best position to serve in Congress as the next representative from the 2nd District, really for 3 reasons. One, I just mentioned I grew up here. I was raised in Cranston, live in Warwick now. And that got me into the community as growing up in and around Patuxent Village. And then I moved into really getting deeper into the community by being a small business, by working for the Cranston Herald and the Warwick Beacon, really getting deeper and understanding the challenges, but also the successes that we have here in Rhode Island. And I know campaigns are often about our challenges, but I'd also like to go to DC to show where Rhode Island is punching above its weight and really being a leader. And then lastly, I have spent my career really making a difference. My first foray into government service was working for the Rhode Island Department of Corrections, where I came to have a strong understanding of the balance between criminal justice and social justice. I actually did work for Congressman Langevin, both here in the district and down in Washington, D.C., and worked for Gina Raimondo when she was both treasurer and governor. I ran her transition into the governor's office. And since leaving government service, I have run a small business myself. I run a small strategic communications firm here in the state. And it is for those 3 reasons, having grown up here with deep roots, having spent my career listening and working to make a difference, is why I think I can hit the ground running on day one and am uniquely qualified for this position and bring a different perspective.
Sure. No, thank you very much. That was a great overall summary. I think it's great for people to hear about being a resident, being here, your whole life. And even though you obviously traveled for working, but then also being a small business owner here. Is your consultancy based in Warwick? Is that how it works?
Yeah, actually it's based in Providence. I'm actually sitting right now, and we have a small office in the CIC building, which is part of the Innovation District now. I can look out my window and see the new pedestrian bridge. We are based in Providence. We do work in and out of Rhode Island, and the firm is doing really well, which is exciting. And the campaign is doing really well. I am working full time. I don't have the luxury of not working, so I am balancing both. And but having watched my own family, my grandfather and father ran a small family business as well, and know what it takes to not only serve your community. They were always involved in Rotary and Cranston politics and so on and so forth. So I grew up with that strong work ethic.
Well, it's certainly something a lot of small business owners know. Running a small business isn't just one hat by any means. There's lots of different hats, and also family in many cases, and things of that nature. So we understand that. We understand all the different parts of that game you've got to play.
It's both also terrifying and exhilarating all at once, wouldn't you say?
Right. Yeah, we've discussed that many times with people here over the last 2 years. There's a lot of uncertainty owning a small business, but the rewards can be hugely gratifying if that's the type of environment you like to work in. It's not like anything else.
No.
But also you mentioned in your bio there, you're a long time part of the political system. You understand how it works. You've been through it on the federal level and on the state level. So it's interesting to hear that part of your background. How do you see obviously small businesses, touches just about everything. We're going to focus on that, economics of it here during this program here. But, obviously congressional seat touches upon a lot of other things besides just small business. But how do you see the federal level affecting small businesses here in Rhode Island? What a congressperson can do?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a couple of things. There's certainly the Small Business Administration and making sure that that is as strong as possible, as well as our own Commerce Department, where former governor now serves as the Secretary of Commerce. There's also resources there as well. I think that in addition to making sure that the funding continues to come from Rhode Island, which I think our delegation right now punches above its weight, we need to make sure that we're looking at bolstering and strengthening programs out there, not only as we saw during the pandemic, but beyond that with things like the Small Business SBIR Fund and the Tech Transfer Funds, for example. Those are things that we can always strengthen and make sure that that money is coming into Rhode Island, as well as disaster relief. We know the climate is changing right before our eyes, and we are prone to hurricanes and other natural disasters, as we saw with Superstorm Sandy as well. So making sure that those resources are always on the ready for whatever may come a small business way. And it's also looking long term. I think there are two issues that I worked on with Congressman Langevin's office. One was making sure family caregivers had access to support and services, which is critical. We all have families and we all have had caregiving experiences. And what does that mean for making sure our workforce can stay employed and
Right.
moving everything forward? But also secondarily, another issue, which I think he had a long-term vision on, and I think we need to get even more serious about, is cybersecurity. Especially during the pandemic, when we saw so many small businesses transfer a lot of their work to online and internet resources. We can't be doing enough there to make sure that those resources are now growing and expanding for small businesses to have that access as well. I know that in the infrastructure bill that passed, there was some small amount of grant money that came out to the states to be able to go out to small businesses to make sure that they understood how to strengthen their own infrastructure. But we can't do enough now to continue to bolster those resources at the state level and making sure that our small businesses have a pathway to access that funding as well.
Well, it's interesting also, during the pandemic, and hopefully, obviously, we never want to see anything like this again, but
Right.
we had the advantage of a lot of great programs that came out of the federal level to help small businesses. Obviously, PPP and the EIDL loan was huge advantage. Those come out of the SBA, but we also thankfully didn't happen to a lot of people, but we saw a lot of fraud, and a lot of that fraud goes back to cybersecurity, like you were saying. And I know a lot of small businesses, many of the members of the coalition, we talked about it with ourselves, like, oh, how did I just got this thing, it says I took a loan out, I didn't take a loan out, or
Right.
I just got my unemployment fraud.
No, I think we all had an experience with DLT of what is this?
Yeah. And we had Matt on here a couple times, and doing the best he can, but no one expects that level of fraud. It really was quite
Right.
quite.
And
insane.
it's interesting too. I was talking to some small businesses the other day who do a lot of work with the federal government, and the federal government has started to say small businesses are not as secure as they need to do for us to be able to do business with them, and that is not good, and that's not right. So all the more reason too, as small businesses who want to expand, working with others to make sure that infrastructure is secure all the way around, and you can trust as you work with those systems that they are safe and
Right.
secure.
Right. As someone who, obviously I did as much as I could for myself, my own business, but also I helped a lot of other businesses apply for things. And yes, I'll definitely say it was difficult at times, Sam's codes and Dunn's codes and all these things that you had to get your business to make sure these things are running. But I literally watched the level of security improve over the course of the pandemic. It was amazing. The login system, went from all this ridiculousness on the SAM side to login.gov, where it was all one thing. And so it's good to see things of that nature happen. So I think, it's interesting when you bring up, like I said, there's lots of other things we don't think of when we think of small business. Cybersecurity seems like a much more global issue, but certainly can be.
No, I think more and more, it's now a critical part of doing business is to making sure that your cyber infrastructure is there, no matter how small you are, especially if you're really consumer facing, because everyone expects now to be able to log in, order what they need,
Right.
and be on their way. And to your question too on what else the federal government can do, one priority that I would have when elected is to make sure constituent services across the board is just stronger. You shouldn't, as a small business owner, have to come looking for me. I'd rather come looking for you, and making sure that, God forbid, we need another PPP program, for example, that we are there ready to serve the small business community on day one to help with navigating that. I know for myself, you read about these programs and you're like, sure, I wonder when I'll have time to figure that out and go through that, when you're trying to grow your business or maintain your business at the same time. And that goes to what I was saying earlier. It's both terrifying and exhilarating.
Yeah.
When you know that there are these programs out there, but the time, energy, and resources it takes a small business owner to navigate is just not convenient or efficient. So the more we can bring this office into the places of business, I think the better for everyone, because there is money, as we all know, there's money there that we've already passed and fought for and worked hard to make sure was there. Now we just got to deploy it.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, we've certainly had that discussion many times at the state level. It's gotten better again. I don't want to just be one of those guys that says the Rhode Island system is still convoluted and a mess, but parts are still a little difficult.
We can always do better, especially,
Yeah, right.
Just the cyber issue alone, 10, 15 years ago, that wasn't wouldn't have been top of mind on this call.
Right.
And I think now everyone realizes how serious we have to get about cyber. And now I think the next frontier for all of us is getting serious about climate and how that will affect our supply chains and our ability to do business, especially small business.
Yeah, no, it's vitally true. Again, I think it's fascinating. So for those who, I want to make sure people understand, you're running the Democratic ticket for the seat. There's a primary first, a September 13th primary. There's several of you running for that. And then the winner of that primary will go up against Alan Fung, who's the only candidate in the Republican side right now. It was interesting. I saw an interview with Alan the other day, and he said, and we'll have him on the show as well in a couple of months. He said he's one of the few Republicans who actually uses the word climate and climate change, which I thought was interesting from that perspective. Climate change covers a ton of different things, and definitely small business falls under that. We there's lots of small business. Wind farms essentially started as small businesses. Solar companies are small businesses. There's lots of things in the blue economy that is big here in Rhode Island that fall into small businesses. Talk a little bit about the blue economy and clean energy and things of those natures, and what you see that you can do as a congressperson.
Yeah, I think, again, it goes back to making sure that we're out there in the community talking to these entrepreneurs, making sure we know what their needs are, and matching it and bringing those ideas back to Washington, D.C. to make sure that we are supporting and promoting programs to help them grow. I think we are behind the 8 ball in so many ways on climate change, and the more we can do to accelerate our transition to a clean economy in a fair and just way that leaves no one behind is of critical importance. And I think we have a gem of a program at the University of Rhode Island. There's more tech transfer work to be done across all of our higher education institutions in terms of research and making sure that we're taking the best and brightest ideas to transfer them into commercialization opportunities. And we have to recognize that our greatest asset is Narragansett Bay. And what are we doing to protect that? Not only from a travel and tourism point of view, but from an aquaculture point of view. And all things flow into Narragansett Bay. So what are we doing to make sure that our water systems and, streams and tributaries that are flowing into the Bay are also healthy? Because we have to do all we can to protect our greatest asset here, our greatest natural asset.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I just had a conversation this morning about farming, and we were talking about how, obviously Rhode Island is small. We don't have any large farms, any huge farms to compete with farms around the other parts of the country. And I said, well, actually, squid is a huge farm here in Rhode Island, and is it? We don't think of, obviously. I would say Sea Freeze and Sea Fresh and Town Dock are all not small businesses anymore, but they were all small businesses at one point.
Yeah, and so, or just our quahoggers that are going out, and the fact that we've been able to open
those are definitely small businesses.
Yeah, in opening, new sections, I think I read recently that Connecticut, a little bit area north of Connecticut, recently reopened after so many
Yep.
years. I mean, that only benefits everyone, and not only from the guy or the girl that's digging the clams, but to the consumer as well. So I think that we have to get serious about all the different, to continue the squid analogy, all the different tentacles that go out into our economy.
Wow,
With
you might just have
I
my
know,
vote
right?
on that, George.
And but it is far-reaching. I mean,
Yeah.
everything, to my mind, this race is about the economy, and everything rolls up into the economy, whether or not we have affordable healthcare and access to affordable healthcare, to our strong education system, to climate. All of these things are interrelated. They work together. They need to all, break down. We need to break down silos wherever possible. And to your point on the farming, I mean, just this weekend, I was at the fishermen's campground down in Point Judith
Oh,
for
yeah.
their farmers market. And we were talking to the gentleman who was running the farm. And, on a peak farmers market day, I'm not sure how many days a week it goes, he said, they can expect between 1,500 and 2,000 people. And that is tremendous. And then to walk around and see all of the different vendors that are there, from fresh fruits and vegetables to baked goods. It's, I can't say enough about our farmers market ecosystem in terms of promoting our agricultural and aquaculture resources here.
Absolutely. No, thank you for pointing that out. It's absolutely true. I mean, I live it, and I can completely understand the joy and the love that people have for our local community of food here. So that's nice. Let's talk about a few of these other things. I'm looking at your website, things that I think will impact the economics of small businesses. Let's start with something that people don't think of immediately, but you brought it up before, and I think it's important because I know, just as a small business owner myself, it certainly helped me, the child tax credit and child care in general. I mean, I'm fortunate enough that I my kids are older now. I don't have to worry about that as much. But if you can't work your business, because you have to take care of your child, understandably so. How does that impact small businesses, and how do you see the tax credit and things of that being useful?
Yeah, when people say that small businesses are the backbone of our economy, which I believe wholeheartedly, that's usually families. That's always families, rather. It's, in my case, I have 2 nephews and a niece, but my dad has Alzheimer's. So there's the other end of the spectrum as well, with family caregivers. So I think we need to look at some of the things that worked during the pandemic, like permanent paid leave. We need to make paid leave permanent now, I think, and extend the child tax credit, as you just mentioned. But we need to make it easier for families to live and work here, and not have to worry if a loved one is sick or a loved one needs extended care, like in the case of my family, and making sure that those services are available. In our case, we'd be lost without the Cranston Adult Day Center. My dad goes there a couple days a week. We know my mom has respite. I know, as someone that is both running a campaign and running a business, that she has her time off as well, and it takes stress off of my brothers and sisters and I. So that's critical. So the more we can put those family policies in place to help people stay at work. Oftentimes, many people want to also go to work, and it's a choice that they have to make, and it's a tough choice in many cases for families. And it shouldn't be that way. If you have a loved one that needs you at home, you shouldn't be worried about not being able to pay the bills at the same time. So those are some critical needs that we need to look at. But then, to extend it even further, I think we do need universal pre-K to match our all-day K programs. And at the other end of the spectrum, we need to make sure the Pell Grant is staying competitive. We need to make sure that the student loan industry is kept in check and cleaned up, so that people can do jobs that they love instead of worrying about paying back their student loans. And then I think another powerful thing, especially as this economy remains in transition, workforce development opportunities. I think Real Jobs Rhode Island, which I worked on or helped launch with Governor Raimondo, has been critical to really bringing business around a table to say, what are your needs and how can we help create that pipeline of talent? but also making sure those programs are apprenticeship programs and workforce development programs are paid. You can't be asking a parent after a long day at work and childcare to then go to a workforce development training program that will only benefit all of us in the long run, as a volunteer or unpaid time. So we need to get creative about all of those things across the spectrum, from our youngest to our oldest.
No, I brought up education many times here on this program before. I think it's vital. I mean, an educated community, an educated workforce is the only thing that's going to help us drive forward. And I think is also I like to point out. I think you mentioned pre-K. As a husband of a school teacher, school is not a daycare. School is not a babysitter, but it's still a vital chunk of the day that.
And to jump in on that point too, David, it's one of the other things that I hear most frequently is mental health support and services. We need more community resources to help people, but we also need more school-based resources. I mean, the last few years have taken a toll. There's no doubt about it. The data is there. So yeah, when I say that everything rolls up into the economy and keeping our small businesses strong, I think affordable access to healthcare is number one on that list. And I think one thing that we can't do enough of right now is making sure that funding is there on the mental health side as well, to help our families, but also to help our teachers who are there every day with our kids.
Yeah, and I think regarding healthcare, it's also something that's come up many times with those of us in the small business community that talk about it. That barrier to leaving whatever job it is you're in that you don't like, but you need it for a number of reasons. Healthcare being one of them primarily, and not being able to just shift things around and move to other places or start your own business, is what we want to see people do, is tough. I mean, that's a tough thing to shake, to say, do I want to leave my job in my healthcare and be kind of vague for a little while, because who knows?
Right.
And many of us in the small business community have talked about how we're lucky to have spouses with those healthcare systems, but it's definitely a difficult thing to change a job without knowing what your healthcare is going to be. If you want to start your own business, do you see a change there with healthcare? Do you think that's something that can? I hesitate. I don't like to bring up the negative here. We try to keep positive and unbiased here on the show. But let's be honest, it's a tough system you'll be moving into if you move into Congress. I mean, it's very fractured, and it doesn't seem like anything's getting done. What are your thoughts there? How do you feel about going into that?
Yeah, it's the first question I always get asked when I'm out talking to voters is first is, why do you want this job? And because of the divisiveness, and because nothing seems to get done. And my answer there, that's not a good reason not to do it, because it has to get done. We have to figure out how to work together. And I do lean on my experience with both the congressman and the governor. We spent some time talking about family caregivers and cybersecurity. He moved the needle on both of those things, reaching across the aisle. They're smaller things, but critically important things. So we shouldn't discount, you see the big bills, the infrastructure bills or the ARA bills that pass. Those are important too, and those will bring a lot of resources to Rhode Island. But there are also smaller things that who can argue with needing more support for our family caregivers. We all experience it. And after everything we just talked about with cybersecurity, it affects, sadly, it affects everyone now. I think we've all had to change, cancel a credit card or call DLT for various reasons. So these are seemingly smaller chunks of bigger issues that you can move along. And from Governor Raimondo, it's realizing, here's the problem that we're solving for, and here's what we need to drive for. So how many voices and how many people can we get around a table to do that? And I know that during her time had experiences working with Republican mayors to do just that, to move things forward. So I do think that there's work that we can do together, and we have to keep chipping away at it. No doubt about it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a very good point. I mean, and I don't need to tell you this as someone who, born and raised here, but you're your constituency will find you. It's Rhode Island. You know, it's almost crazy. You know, sometimes when I talk to friends in other parts of the country, and I you know, we talk politics, and I mentioned, you know, having a conversation with Senator Reed, and they're like, "You talk to your senator?" And it's like, yeah, he's pretty easy to get a hold of. So we're lucky. It's a benefit, I think.
It's a tremendous benefit. And I will also say, just, you know, running a small business, you have to navigate challenges with clients and negotiate and figure out how to not only negotiate that relationship with the client, but making sure that you're delivering for the client. So that's something that I have experience doing every day. Whether it be in government service or now in running a small business. You don't have the luxury of saying, well, I'm not going to work with you, you know, because that's important. And you just have to figure it out. And that's what I have a track record of doing, and a reputation for rolling up my sleeves and diving in.
Well, I certainly, you know, I don't envy you the climate that it is right now, but I certainly hope that you know, if you make it to Congress, that you can do as much as you possibly can, because I think that's obviously what everyone. I have to believe that's what everyone ultimately wants to do. Any congressperson, they want to try and make a difference and make a change. Yeah. Let's see. I've got. We talked about Pell Grants and pre-K. Supply chain issues. Obviously, something very important to small businesses. It's been affecting across the board, and I know it was mentioned on your website. What are your thoughts there? You know, regarding small businesses, what do you think Congress can do? Because at a certain point, I wonder if it is even something the government can affect as much as we think. Is it just simply a matter of capitalism to a certain degree? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think we have found that, and I think the SBA has also talked about this a little bit too, is bringing manufacturing back to America, back to the United States, making sure that the supply chain issues that we first experienced during the pandemic don't happen again here. And what can we bring back, and what small businesses can we bolster here already in Rhode Island? I know every opportunity I get, I try and shop local. And that is everything from, you know, going to farmers markets to going to the mom and pop appliance shop and so on and so forth. But what can we do to bring manufacturing back to the United States to help with the next big crisis, actually? And then, you know, obviously there are geopolitical issues that are affecting supply chain issues too. Another reason and argument to try and bring as much back to the United States as we can. But I think it is it's a problem that we need to work on and be committed to investing in over the long term. When I talk to small businesses, it's funny. I talked to a restaurant owner who is very excited about opening, but waiting on his chairs. I talked to, a general contractor who tells me, you know, the price of lumber has gone through the roof. You know, I talked to other defense company, like small business technology companies, who can't get the materials that they need. So the problem is not, unfortunately, not isolated to one sector of the economy. And that's why we need a full court press to try and bolster what we have, the talent and the opportunities that we have here over the long term.
Well, let's talk, while connected to that, bring manufacturing back, things of that nature. I think ultimately it comes down to the workforce. You know, right now we're seeing these record low unemployment numbers, which is astonishing, but still, so many people not being able to find employees. Right. And then the fact that employees need to make more because we're seeing, record inflation. How do you see? It's all intertwined, but it's obviously a very difficult problem because, if you raise people's salaries, then, the business needs to make more, but the people's salaries, need to be higher to buy the products that are out there that are, seeing these high prices. What do you see that Congress can do there? What are your thoughts?
It's a combination of things, again, some of which we've already covered here, but there's the short term, looking at windfall profit taxes, looking at price gouging and so on and so forth, and extending some of that relief that we saw during the pandemic with paid leave and the child tax credit. Over the long term, I think you're right. I think it is centered around education and workforce development issues, and making sure that that people are prepared for this economy that will be in transition for a very long time, in making the correct investments there by growing opportunities like Real Jobs Rhode Island, where employers are around the table to say, this is my growth trajectory and this is what I need to get there. But yeah, I just went through a litany of things that I hear from small business people about supply chain. Workforce is another issue that they're having. And
Right.
Tied to workforce too, in some industries in particular, it's more acute, is housing and affordable housing. And we know that
Very true.
shortage here is hurting. I talked to someone in the travel and tourism industry who, can't fully, even if he can find the employees and staff up, there's no place for them to live within a reasonable commuting distance. Same thing with some other small businesses that I've talked to. I could get them, I found the employee, but they can't find housing. And that's another challenge that we have to really move quickly to get our arms around. But back to your original question on inflation, it's completely unacceptable, and everyone's feeling the squeeze right now. So the more we can do to get serious about the short term and the long term, both at the same time, because we can't wait on one for the other, is going to be critical to small businesses and our entire economy here in Rhode Island.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate, I realize I'm bringing up some very big issues that, we can't, cover everything in half an hour, but I appreciate the conversation about it.
Yeah,
Is there
thank you.
anything that we didn't touch upon? Anything you want to talk about before we go?
No, I mean, you're right. We did cover a lot of ground, and
Yeah.
you can't everything is too interrelated right now to isolate one thing. I mean, for small businesses to thrive, we need to make sure we have the trained workforce there. We need to make sure there's affordable access to healthcare. We need to make sure that we're thinking about cybersecurity and climate change all at the same time, housing and mental health, two other really big issues. And again, I think because of my experience, both as a small business, someone that's running a small business now, but also my government experience, and being around the tables as things like Real Jobs Rhode Island was coming together, or the launch of 10,000 small businesses. I worked on that as well. I can hit the ground running on day one for our small business community, and by extension, all Rhode Islanders, especially those in the 2nd Congressional District. I do bring a unique set of experiences and a different perspective to this job that I think will be valuable on day one, and helping to move our state forward. So I really appreciate the opportunity today, David, to talk to your members, and anyone else that's listening. And if you'd like to learn more about the campaign, you can find us at joyfoxcongress.com.
Sounds great. Thank you. Again, that was joyfoxcongress.com. For those of you out there who didn't hear that the first time, joyfoxcongress.com. Always feel like repetition is good with those things, so people can make sure they head to
Thank
it.
you.
But thank you very much for your time today, Joy. We appreciate it, and good luck with everything. Remember, for all of you out there, the primary is September 13th. So check out her website and make sure you vote. Make sure you're registered. Make sure you vote. So thank you again, Joy.
Thank you, David. Take care.
Bye-bye. So that was a great conversation. I hope you enjoyed that. As I mentioned, we've got other candidates coming up here on the show. We've got Helena Folks in a few weeks. We've got Ashley Kalis in a few weeks. They're both running for governor. And as you might have heard during the show, we've got Alan Fung coming up in a few weeks as well. We've already had Seth Magaziner on, and other candidates running for office. The primary again is Tuesday, September 13th, and then the general election is in November. You can find more information and everything about the Rhode Island Small Business Coalition at risbc.org. And I hope to see you next time. Thank you.